Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. There are some seats available if you feel more comfortable to sit. And this is a session on scaling responsible AI solutions. Can you hear me okay? Is that too loud? Okay. Wonderful. Let's get started. So this session is about one of the projects that GPay ran in 2023 called Scaling Responsible AI Solutions. So this is the agenda. We're going to be presenting with my co-chair, Francesca Rossi, who's online from New York, about the project. And then our colleague Sundar will moderate a conversation and presentation by the 5 teams, or the 4 teams that are present here that run the project. And we're going to have a conversation at the end to discuss and welcome all your questions. So let's give us a small introduction about scaling responsible AI solutions and what it meant and why we did it so far. So the goal of the project was really to initially, knowing that everybody in the world right now is working on different AI solutions, whether on one side on the startup side or on the government side or academic front, there is a lot of emphasis on responsible AI and trustworthy and ethical conversations. So we wanted to have a sense of what responsible AI means and how people are working on it and would their solutions are first responsible with a scale. So the goal of the project was to give a number of teams globally a chance to get advice and support from us and learn from them as well about what challenges they're facing when they're building AI solutions, when they're trying to make those AI solutions responsible, and what challenges they face if they wanted to scale them. And also, as we learn this and work with the teams, share with the larger community some advice and recommendations and learning about how AI teams themselves can benefit from this experience, but also policymakers and government also get a sense of recommendation from this project. Simply put, this diagram represents what we're talking about, and some of you have been probably in the other room have heard this before. The goal of responsible AI is to make sure that solutions are built both responsibly and also can scale. So if you take those 2 axes, on x-axis scalability and the y-axis, on x-axis responsibility and y-axis responsibility, there's obviously an intersection that we want to meet, meaning that solutions need to be both scalable and responsible. I gave the example an hour ago about when you use chatbots for customer support in some e-commerce website, those chatbots can obviously scale. There's a known technology, there's capability that it can scale, but we don't know if when they are scaling, if they're fully meeting the responsibility part of those solutions. Are they transparent, are they trustworthy? Can rely on them? Is it something that be protecting children? Is it matching every cultural aspect? So the responsible part basically helps operationalize ethical framework and all the framework that we're working on, but at the same time, they're not always necessarily sufficient for scaling solutions. So what are the challenges that we're facing? And solutions fall within one of those categories. There are either none of them or some of them. And the goal was to identify teams that are working on solutions and help them actually get to the top right quadrant and be ready. The project was done over a year. We started the call in January to March and recruited a number of teams. 22 teams from 15 different countries applied. And we selected 5 teams based on the project they're working, the geography they were on, and the diversity of the solutions. And teams were basically working on a two timeline. One first timeline was to work on challenges around responsibility. So we created what we call deep dives. And doing deep dives, mentors and experts from GPay work with the teams to identify challenges related to the responsible part. When this was done, teams were given another chance to work on the operationalizing part of the scalability, which we call the operationalized plan or operationalizing plan of their effort. And this was done with the expert, but also validated with experts. So teams provided a report, which is a GPay report that we have mentioned, which we're going to mention again today, and teams will dive into every details this morning. And the report was published, and today we're presenting the summary in this summit right now. So what we learned, I think we're going to pass on to my colleague Francesca Rossi to talk about the main activities and the learning. Francesca?
Okay. So these are the main activities. Some of them were mentioned by Amir as well. So we matched these teams that we selected out of those that expressed interest in joining this project. So we selected 5 teams and we matched them with some of the experts in the Responsible AI working group and also in other GPA working groups that acted as mentors for these teams, meaning that they were advising the teams on how to identify one specific challenge in terms of, for the project, in terms of responsible AI, and then understand how to address that challenge. And then this identification of challenge was transformed by the teams into a document that is also included in the report, and that describes the challenge and what can be done about the challenge. And then later on, we also evaluated another document that the teams put together to tell us how they were planning to implement that discussion about addressing the challenge. And all this information has been included in the report. And as a final step, it was the identification of specific recommendations, both for AI teams and for policymakers, and for the AI teams on how to build a solution that would be under the responsible AI principles, and for policymakers how to help those AI teams that want to build responsible AI solutions, and how to facilitate addressing the challenges to go towards responsible and scalable AI solutions. And again, this will be done again next year, but of course we hope with an accelerated pace, especially in the first phases of the project, where we had to define the dimensions, the evaluation metrics and so on, and we hopefully, so those we won't start from scratch next year, and also expanding the reach of the call. Want to go to the next slide? Here is a map that shows where we got the applications from. There were 23 teams distributed in these 15 countries over 5 continents. You see that some of them are GPA member countries, but others are not. This was open to everybody. And at the end, out of these 23 teams that shown interest in working with us, we selected 5 of them. If you go to the next slide, there is a description of the 5 teams that participated with us in the project. And today you will see, I think, the presentation of 4 of them. But you will find the information about all 5 of them in the report that we put together. So you'll see that they cover a very wide set of countries, India as well, as the place where you are right now, but also Italy, Mexico, Canada, and Germany. They range from topics that have to do with the healthcare access, to workers' well-being, to the environment, to the auditing of AI systems, in particular AI chatbots, to the building of platforms, and in particular the Germany team is building a voice bot-based platform for democratic participation and awareness. So each one of these teams had, we focused with them on one challenge about responsible AI, and for that challenge they did the mentorship phase and then the evaluation phase and on addressing that particular challenge. If you go to the next slide, so although these teams were very different and also embedded into very different cultures and environments in terms of geographic location, but also AI maturity, some of them were facing, we realized they were facing similar challenges in integrating responsible AI principles in their project. So, for example, challenges related to human-centeredness, to data governance frameworks, to consultation with stakeholders, the education of the users of their AI products, the testing in a safe and effective testing of the product, and also maintaining the safety while scaling the solution across different contexts, and also the availability of resources and funding. So these are challenges that in some sense were shared by many of these 5 projects. You go to the next slide. So as I said, at the end, we compiled a list of recommendations for both policymakers and AI teams. Here you see just the titles of most of them, but in the report you'll find a lot more, deeper description of these recommendations. And you see they're very varied, but the whole point is really to help both AI teams, like the ones that we worked on, and many, many others, from the experience of what we learned from working with them. So the fact that they should focus on responsibility, not just at the end of the AI lifecycle, but also throughout the whole process, the identification of stakeholder and consultation, the impact assessment, the testing part, the data governance, and many others. So this is for AI teams. And for policymakers also to help them understand how they can help these teams that are willing to work towards making more responsible and scalable AI solutions. So the recommendation to work on setting standards, on regulate thinking and competitiveness, to build safe data infrastructures and public, to facilitate this controlled testing that the teams will need to do, to funding structures specific for responsible AI, to define frameworks for data collections that respect some responsible AI principles, and then to facilitate also consultation between public and private partnerships. If you go to the next slide, I think that now Amir, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Francesca. And as Francesca mentioned, all the details and this was a condensed view of those recommendations and results is in the report that we published this month that you can find on the GPA website. Now we're going to pass on to the second part of this session, which is the actual presentation by teams. And for that, I'm going to invite Sundar to help us with the moderation and welcoming each team and diving into their presentations.
Thank you, Amir. My name is Sundar. My most recent work related to the topic here is I was a fellow at the World Economic Forum in the AI team, developing a framework for chatbots, and a couple of members on the panel were actually involved in that project as well. So we have, as Amir mentioned, we have 4 teams present here, and they will be presenting the work that they have been doing during the last few months along with us in terms of identifying the challenges that they have encountered in developing solutions in AI, both in responsible way and in scaling. And we will invite them to present now one by one, and then we will have a panel discussion afterwards. So the teams will present the following topics. They will present their project in terms of the topics they worked on and the solution, the approach they have taken to those particular problems. And in the process of doing this, working with us in the Scaling Responsible AI Solutions program, they have learned several things and they will share those experience. And they will also talk about how they plan to act upon what they have learned during this learnings during this project. So, and they will explain the next steps that they plan to take in order to achieve scalable and responsible AI solutions. So with that, we will move to the first presentation by Dr. Suresh Munuswamy on Comprehensive. It's an at-home universal primary healthcare solution.
Hello. Well, thank you, Sundar, and thank you, GPA team. Getting used to the digital equipment, I guess. Our project is titled Comprehensive because apparently it is comprehensive, where we are trying to screen a human being head to toe. And in reference, you need to start thinking about how it actually happens on the field, or perhaps like in a clinic where a lot of it is very verticalized. So you go to either a cardiologist or a neurologist, but on the field in primary healthcare, what you require is to screen a person, holistically and perhaps like comprehensively. And that's essentially what our application actually does. And we rely on a few USP here. One is the application is completely icon based. It does not have language as a UI. India is the only country in the world with 22 official languages. And that itself is a challenge when we design digital applications, take it to people, and you'll have to translate it 22 times, and then it becomes a challenge. So the first USP is it has icons. So what we did was we looked at the diseases. All diseases are signs and symptoms. We identified the keywords, converted the signs and symptoms to icons. The next USP is we take images. A lot of the signs and symptoms can be seen visually. The other two forms is hearing and feeling. Usually 70% of signs and symptoms can be seen visually. So we are taking visual imaging. And then as the next step, we will be developing AI tools which will automatically start segregating the images into normal, abnormal, and as the next step, abnormal, different types of abnormality. So this is how the application is actually designed. On the right side, you see the interventions. Now you go to a person's home, you start screening head to toe, and then you take all these images. Eventually, the AI actually comes in, starts grading, and then the interventions part is when we have to start treating. So you need to bring the product side of it. That's essentially the entire concept. We have been working with World Economic Forum on the drone side also, and I'm sure you know that in India there are like 15 states already using drones. So this is the entirety of the application, which is why we have termed it as comprehensive. Now with regard to the responsible part, when we started off with this application, one of the challenges with the AI is the lack of equity. Now, the operational side of it is we don't know where the data is coming from, and we also don't know if the data is actually representative of the entire population. So the way that we are actually addressing that is we are screening the entire population. In fact, we are screening 500,000 people. We are screening everybody. It's not only the deceased people, but also the normal people. So that's the starting point of we visualizing our AI application as being responsible, screening the entire population, which means, in fact, this is one of the applications where there is extremely limited bias. There's almost no bias because you are getting data from everybody. The second part that we are actually looking at is a granular consent. Meaning if you are kind of doing any kind of a service, you take a consent, which is what the government also basically says. But here we have divided it into different parts, meaning even this head-to-toe examination is like 15 modules. So you need to consent for each and every module. This gives you two options. One is you are explained all these 15 different modules clearly. So it gives you 15 opportunities to explain. But also for the patient, it gives you 15 opportunities to opt out for a particular module. So this way, there's a lot more control on the information that is actually being shared, and there's a lot more information that's actually being shared to the person also. This is where we started, and we started working with GPA, and we expanded to develop a complete life cycle approach. So we started off with a kind of our own responsible way, and then realized that there is actually a lot more you need to do with regard to scaling it up in a responsible way. And along with giving consent, once we collect the data, as we go forward, we realize that we have to give the patients or even the persons a lot more control on the way that the data is actually used. Can they actually have the right to access? If they don't want to be part of the system at any point in time, can they actually have the option or the right to be forgotten? And if we are actually going to use the data for any kind of analytical development, they also need to have the right to be informed. And these are these kind of additional features that we'll be adding up as we go forward. And also, we will possibly be creating a patient portal where they would be visualizing, or they will be seeing at each and every step this data is actually being used, and they will also have the option to be part of it or opt out of it. And when they opt out of it, what happens to the data? So those are all the framework that we are actually trying to work out with and see how we can scale it up in a responsible way. And this is where talking to GPA experts and also interacting with the larger group, international group, we also understand what are all the rules and regulations that are being followed across the world, and how we can actually integrate those rules and regulations to our framework and to our application. And the challenge in our case is fairly very unique, especially in healthcare. You talk about artificial intelligence, and the way or the area that we actually use these applications is very rural and remote areas. In fact, like even in our present application, we trained healthcare workers. 40% of the healthcare workers never used a smartphone in their life. This is the first time they're actually using. So our application is fairly very usable because it's icon based. Literacy is not actually a huge requirement. So we are able to train them. But on the other side, understanding AI to this population is a bit of a challenge. Even today, we have a challenge in vaccination where people refuse for it. And for these people to understand the logic behind it is a little bit of a challenge. So this is where you have a very steep gradient. On one side, you have this high-tech world trying to come out with the AI algorithms. On the other side, you actually have people who are barely trying to understand even what digitization is. They are only trying to get onto regular phones, smartphones. And then you need to make sure that you actually convey this information on what kind of data you are collecting, how you are going to use, how these AI algorithms were actually developed with their data, and then ensure that they are also part of your system. So these are all the challenges that we faced, and these are all the frameworks that we are trying to develop so that in some ways, at least slowly, this information can start percolating. So one of the outputs, or perhaps like the understanding that we came out with this after this discussion, is we need to rely more on multimedia based kind of approaches where we can take this information forward to them, not necessarily the publications that we actually do on the academic side and perhaps like presenting in these conferences, but we need to kind of make this information a lot more local. We need to make sure that this so-called AI development is actually being understood on the local level. So these are all the learnings that we actually had as part of this discussion. Also, as we go forward, we will create a data governance committee which will look at each and every data point. So each and every data point has to be justified. It's not simply collecting data for collecting data's sake, but you need to start justifying each and every data. And then we also need to understand how long we are going to keep the data, what are going to be the analysis, and also we need to start thinking about the end of life for the data itself. How are we going to kind of perhaps like erase it off, or maybe even like de-identify it and use it for future applications or future analytics, how long the data has to be held. So these are all the things that we need to really think about and perhaps come out with a framework, which is what we have been doing as part of this exercise. The other part of it is the what we call validation of the AI algorithms. How do we validate these AI algorithms? In which case, we need to necessarily share the data to third-party evaluators, and how are we actually going to do that? So this is where we need to start looking at how to de-identify data, but still preserving the characteristics of the data, which will help us to come out with this validation, and then see the algorithms that we are actually developing will also perhaps be validated by other people who have access to this data, but in a de-identified way. So again, we are working on framework on how to de-identify the data and also give access to the stakeholders who might be coming out with parallel validation protocols, which will actually help us. And the last one basically is the fact that AI has to be in a very transparent way, or the AI should be developed in a very transparent way. And this is where we need to document each and every step, as in like even coming out with a framework on why we are actually collecting the data. Explaining why is fairly very simple, as in like healthcare access is very challenged, it's very hard to find a doctor, but then coming out with an intelligent algorithm which is going to perhaps do the job in a primary care setup and for primary care services to a population who are basically just now looking at digitization and perhaps like just now stepping into digitization is going to be a challenge. So we are looking at different points here. One is on the technical side, coming out with these frameworks for data use, data lifecycle. On the other side, the social aspects of the artificial intelligence, which is how to explain AI to people who are going to be challenged in understanding. So these are some of the areas that we are actually working with, and it's going to be a continuous effort where we have come out with this framework. But as we go forward, we'll be working with GPIA and slowly start developing the details of the framework and also be continuously publishing with the GPIA. These are some of the images where our present application is primarily collecting the data, where it's being used in Bihar, Nepal, Bengal, and you can actually see the UI also. It's completely icon based. You don't actually see the text in the application. So thank you for listening. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. As you saw, this is the kind of the front end of the AI application, collecting data, and you're going to hear from the other panelists the other aspects of AI as well. So the next presentation is from Mexico. They are online, and this is about a application looking at from satellites of an area of Mexico called Jalisco. That's the first word there, Jalisco. And they are looking at seeing how to understand deforestation and understand using AI the different parts of the forest ecosystem. So with that, I invite the Mexico team to present.
Hello, everyone. I hope can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So great. We have a video. I don't know if someone give you the video. Please let me know. In the meanwhile, I want to say thank you for the GPI team, because they help us a lot with all the things. Please go ahead with the video. And I'm here for any question about this.
Hello, thank you for the kind invitation. My name is Raul Naclares. I work as Government Intelligence Director for the Government of Jalisco. For the scaling responsible AI project, Mexico's AI forest mapping system. This project aims to develop an early warning system for deforestation that can monitor and detect illegal deforestation in almost real time using satellite imagery to enable authorities to respond more rapidly and identify the most critical restoration and conservation areas. Our early warning system uses Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 imagery and several AI models to classify forests and non-forests and detect deforestation. The team is composed of a group of AI experts and remote sensing specialists working for the Government of Jalisco and the National Forest Commission in cooperation with the USAID and the US Forest Service. In this map, we present the areas that are currently being monitored. The yellow polygon is located in the region where most of the avocado orchards are located in Jalisco, and the red ones represent two national parks located in Chiapas and Campeche. During our participation in the project, the discussion with the mentors allowed us to improve the definition and goals of the project. It also gave us time to review some of the possible impacts of the models on the population living in the areas that are being monitored. Also, the conversation with the mentors let us explore the challenges and risks of our models and allowed us to notice issues we hadn't noticed before. The mentor suggested that the teams would focus on transforming the models into a decision support system that can be used to support human decision making in a responsible, proportionate, transparent, and unbiased way. Some of the issues we discussed are the need to improve the robustness of the AI models for different seasons and regions in Mexico. The seasonal alternance in some areas in Mexico is very strong, and this has a huge impact on the accuracy of classification models. Also, the importance of developing an easy-to-use interface. translating the interface into the different languages spoken by indigenous communities in these areas. They need to create an adequate complaints and dispute resolution mechanism, and need for the application reports and dashboards to be tailored to the requirements of different stakeholders. We need more resources to scale up and adopt a responsible framework and to better understand the possible socioeconomic impacts of the decision system. Also, we have to organize a second meeting with all stakeholders so we can better understand the needs of the authorities and how to allow the results generated by the AI models to be used as proof legal processes. We also need to develop a friendly UX and deploy the AI models with different interfaces so they can be used by users with different levels of expertise. Below you can see a couple of images of the output of the model for the forest classification. Yellow represents non-forest land cover. We cannot share information on the deforestation alerts yet because they haven't yet been published. You can find more information about our project in the GPI report. Thanks to the GPI for letting us participate in the event. Have a good day.
Thank you. Eduardo, do you want to say anything more about the project?
No, just say thank you again to Francesca, to you, to Amir, for all the Ulises Cortez, of course, and we are here for any question. Thank you again.
Are there any questions from the audience at this point, since we have a little bit of time for their project? So deforestation AI. If not, you will get a chance to ask again when we have the panel discussion. Okay. Thank you. Can we switch to the presentation? Thank you very much. Next, we have a team from Italy that actually has their device that will be in demonstration tomorrow, I believe, hopefully, with the equipment on its way to the exhibit hall. So you'll have a chance to see this device in operation when it's demonstrated. But for now, we invite the team to present their work. Their project is in an industrial setting for helping workers from having physical issues when they're using their devices and so on, working in a factory, for example, and how you use wearables and robotics for assessment and assistance of industrial workers. We invite the team to now present. So Daniele online will be presenting. Go ahead, Daniele.
Yes, so welcome everyone, and thank you very much once again for inviting us to give this presentation. I think we can move to the next slide, because I'm not in control of the presentation. Yeah. So this project was initially selected as the ERGOCA project, and the overall objective of the ERGOCA project is that of minimizing the impact of the musculoskeletal disease in industry and healthcare environments. So just to give you some numbers, which are a little bit worrying, the current trends in the musculoskeletal diseases for workers, we have that at least in Italy, the 70% of reports for stopping the daily activities at the work environments are due to the classical back pain. And this is clear. This trend is not only in Italy, we also in Europe, we have very worrying trends that somehow highlight the fact that the classical back pain and in general the musculoskeletal diseases is indeed a barrier for inefficient productivity. And if you look at these numbers also with somehow the current trends of the population aging, we clearly understand that the situation might get even worse in the coming decades. So the ErgoCub project that we coordinate in a joint venture between the Italian Institute of Technology and INAIL, the Italian Institute for Work Accident and Prevention, aims basically at finding robotics and artificial intelligence solutions to lower the impact of musculoskeletal diseases in future industry environments. So the next slide shows the solutions that we propose. More precisely, we are proposing two solutions. The first one is humanoid robots that we are developing into the project. So if if you can click on the yes. So basically, this is
ErgoCub is the result of a project initiated 2 years ago with the Italian Institute for Insurance Against Accidents at Work. It aimed at creating new humanoids and wearable technologies capable, thanks to artificial intelligence, of assessing and preventing health risks and safety for workers in industrial and hospital settings. Its name refers precisely to ergonomics and also to iCub, a humanoid child from IIT, which served as the reference platform for developing the project. ErgoCub is 1 meter 50 centimeters tall and weighs almost 56 kilograms. It has hands optimized for carrying heavy loads, a face capable of displaying various expressions. It has tools for depth perception and navigation. It has a robust gait, can reach a speed of 3 kilometers per hour, practically the walking speed of a person, can recognize objects, manipulating them with both hands. It is capable of identifying when someone intends to hand it an object, take it, and then return it. The technology of ErgoCub is completed by iFeel, a sensorized suit that also includes a pair of shoes that can monitor the movements and efforts of the wearer.
iFeel plays a key role in advanced teleoperation methods, allowing the teleoperation of ErgoCub from Italy to London and, more recently, over a distance of approximately 9,800 kilometers, covering the span from Italy to Japan.
ErgoCub is a project that develops technologies to catalyze the necessary digital transformation for reducing the number of musculoskeletal diseases related to biomechanical risk in future workers.
So basically, the overall objective of the ErgoCub is that one of producing the humanoid robots and the wearable technologies for monitoring the future workers in healthcare and industry-like environments. During the mentorship program, however, we haven't been investigating the trustworthy, responsible AI guidelines for both humanoids and wearables, but we just focused on the use of wearables, and we try to understand how wearable technologies enabled by artificial intelligence should be somehow developed in a responsible manner. So, next slide, please. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, so the first question that we tried to understand is what does it mean to develop trustworthy AI systems in the context of wearables? Because sometimes the word trustworthy is not really well defined, and we wanted to really understand clearly what we meant with the development of trustworthy AI systems in the context of wearables. So for us, developing trustworthy AI systems means finding the right framework which allows us to understand the risks of deploying right solutions in the context of frameworks. So we really wanted to understand what was the current possible trends of defining standards, so that then the word of trustworthy responsible AI solutions might might have a more concrete significance. So, and if you look at the current trends that attempt to define these frameworks for defining the risks of AI solutions in wearables, we clearly understand that the state of the art is at a preliminary stage. So here just we mentioned three current under development frameworks for wearables. And these concern both standard, technical certifications and standards for deploying wearables. But the main point of this research that we did during the mentorship program was to highlight that we have at a preliminary stage for having a clear framework for standardization in wearables. So the first exercise then we attempted to do was to define a new way for defining the requirements of responsible AI systems. And the first thing that actually we proposed was to decompose the requirements of wearables when enabled by AI into three categories. So the first one is technical requirements, where usually we encompass the classical requirements for the device itself. Then the socio-technical requirements, which is the intermediate spot between the technical and also the social requirements. So this categorization really allows any wearable device system that then also have AI on top of it to have a clearer classifications of the features that might then induce different risks when deploying the whole system. And in fact, concerning deployment, if we can go next, concerning deployment, we have been looking for other frameworks which allow us to understand better the risks that we might encounter when deploying the AI system into real use cases. And for this, we have been researching the state of the art, and we identified the NIST risk management framework, which is a new framework recently released by NIST, and it consists of four main horizontal functions, which is govern, map, measure, manage. And each of these horizontal functions then have to be specified for the application at hand. And in order to specify the four horizontal functions, so we can implement the so-called RMF profiles. So if we can go forward, so the so-called RMF profile are verticals that attempt at specifying better the risks of deploying AI-enabled systems under the head of these four principles. And we have been doing this exercise for the wearables in general, thanks to the projects of responsible and scaling AI solutions. So then the next slide, we just showed a few instances of risks that we identified for the wearables in general. And each of these risks have been categorized with the four functions of the NIST framework. And then the really interesting part is that we have been able to find the KPIs, so concrete measurements of risks in each of these categories. Just to give you an example, if you can go next, just to give you an example concerning the acceptability of the, I don't know if we can go next. Yeah, concerning the acceptability of future wearable solutions enabled by AI, understanding how to find metrics that then can quantify if the system will be accepted or not by real workers has not been an easy exercise, but we think that this is a fundamental step if we want the technology to be accepted in future work environments. So to conclude, next. Yeah, so to conclude, the lessons learned over the last three months have been many. First of all, trustworthy AI frameworks are at a preliminary stage, but yet they can be really usable. And more precisely, what we clearly understood is that these frameworks provide general ideas on how to design trustworthy AI systems, and we perceive that it's fundamental to test these frameworks. So we really need to test these frameworks, and in this context, the NIST risk management framework provides the tool of profiles, which are verticals that help individuals and organizations to then test these frameworks. So probably the other lessons learned is that it is really the right moment to consider the emerging frameworks at the national and the continental, why not the EU level. And another point that we clearly understood is that the taxonomy of the requirements embedding a responsible and scaling AI principle might be really useful for future wearable devices and in general any AI-powered device that might lead to responsible solutions. So with this, I conclude my presentation, and we stay available for any other question.
Thank you, Daniele. After all the presentations, we are going to have a panel discussion here, but right now we are going to interfere with that and invite Dr. Daniela Battisti, who is the International Relations Head Officer in the Digital Transformation Effort Department in Italy. She's joining with us online, and we would like to ask her opinions and questions about this project and related questions about that. Thank you, Dr. Daniela. Let me start by asking you a quick question, and perhaps there'll be others from the team as well. What is your opinion on this solution by the Italian team, and how the government is supporting or incentivizing responsible AI solutions and their scaling in terms of what Italy is doing? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And actually, the presentation was the presentation I saw so far were very interesting, because Italy will have the G7 presidency next year. And one of the issues we would like to tackle during this presidency is really how you use AI application in the public sector in an ethical manner. Well, you know, with ethical, we use this word that it's easier for the public at large to understand, but it's really trustworthy and reliable AI. So this panel is actually very interesting to me, because it is that's exactly what we are trying to understand as government, how you can operationalize principles and recommendation, which is never easy. And Daniele showed it very well, because well, of course, you have the intersection where you have technical standards, and in a way that's easier because you already have a framework. But then there is all the rest, which is not in a way formalized and has metric to apply. So this is it's a difficult question for governments because we are aware that this is an issue, especially in the public sector, because of course we can ask the private sector to comply, but then if we as a government buy products or use products that do not comply, that's a problem for us because the government is there for the public good, public and social good. So this is actually something that we want to work on. And the work that GPI is doing is in this area. It's very important to us. Of course, you know, there is the new AI Act as European EU member state. We have to comply. The AI Act has not been finalized yet. And then we have other 2 years to implement the regulation. But what I see the value of the projects I saw so far is that there is a very important impact on people's lives. And in my own experience, the conversation is too much focused on risks. I mean, if you open a newspaper today, it's really about AI and destruction of humanity. So probably what we need right now is the support from the scientific community in focusing on the positive aspects instead of the negative aspects. Because of course, you know, people tend to listen to the bad news, not to the good news. I don't know if I answer your question, but I mean, truly there is a commitment to work within the G7 family. I guess the GPA would be part of the conversation as it was during the Hiroshima process. And so possibly we want to see more of this example and understand how the regulation or the regulatory framework can be simplified and can help. Just, you know, an example that I use with policymakers or politicians is the one with the seat belt, because that's easier to understand, you know. I mean, there was the first seat belt, probably it wasn't as efficient as the one we had now. And then we had the bags, you know, complementing the use of the seatbelt. And then we discovered that the seatbelt, in a way, they were made for men and not for women. So I believe that with AI and AI application like the ones I saw this morning, well, in Italy it's early morning, I think that go in that direction. But of course, there must be more interaction, because AI is a totally new field that escape the immediate understanding of the average people. I don't know if I answer your question, though.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daniele, especially for pointing out that we need to have a balanced conversation between the positive impacts and the risks that sometimes dominates the headlines, and for your leadership in the G7 and also in terms of the EU Act that is coming up for AI. Thank you very much for your comments. In the audience, if there are other GPA government people, we invite you to also join the panel, such as Dr. Daniele is a GPA member from Italy. If anyone from India and other countries are present, please let us know. We can direct questions to you as well in terms of how governments can support these initiatives. With that, I just want to make one remark. Dr. Suresh reminded me that IIT is a word that is used as an abbreviation for many institutions around the world, notably Indian Institute of Technology here in Delhi. The one that was presented is obviously the Italian Institute of Technology, and there's also the Illinois Institute of Technology and so on. Just wanted to make sure that that message got through to you all. With that, we'll move to the next presentation. It'll be from Germany, I believe, if you pull up the presentation. Particip AI is a Germany-based organization that is actively involved, and we have two people present, one physically in person here, Mei-Lin Fang, and also online. We have Jascha Stein joining us from Germany. So we will start their presentation now.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Mei-Lin, would you like to?
No, it's very hard to do that because I'm short. Can I? Thank you. In an effort to be responsible and inclusive, short people. So, I'd like to say that I'm co-chair of the People-Centered Internet, but I'm also co-chair of Particip.ai, which is, in fact, one of the top 5 finalists in this Responsible AI project. And my executive chair for Particip.ai, the CEO, Jascha Stein, is online with us. I don't know if we can see him, but I'm very glad to be here. I think this is a very, very, very important topic. The General Partnership on AI is providing tremendous leadership at a time that's greatly needed. I represent the internet community. I co-founded the People-Centered Internet with Vint Cerf, one of the fathers of the internet. And AI and the internet are as important as writing and the printing press in terms of the transformation that's going to happen. Can we have the next slide? Jascha is on here. So Jascha Stein is an AI pioneer. He is the CEO of Omnibot, which is a conversational AI company, but he has a great, great commitment to social impact, and which is why he founded Particip.ai. I founded People-Centered Internet. I was one of the pioneers of CRM, Customer Relationship Management, 30 years ago. And I saw the impact of technology on people's lives. That's the reason I felt it was very, very important that we talk about how to have a people-centered internet. That means internet and AI that is of the people, by the people, for the people, and with the people. Next slide, please. What has happened with the World Economic Forum is actually thinking about chatbots, the framework for governing responsible use of conversational AI. And Jascha Stein and Particip.ai were very deeply involved in that publication that was in December of 2020. More recently, Jascha and I have published within the IEEE journal the Bridge Journal. It's the #2 print journal of the IEEE, addressing the digital divide. Because if we don't address the digital divide, the chasm is going to get wider. But we have to mitigate the risk of AI by people-centered collaborative digital regulation. We have to make AI work for everyone. And that requires, and we spoke about it at the earlier session, the concept of AI governance sandboxes. Why do we have sandboxes? We have sandboxes with children to let them learn, to play. We need to have sandboxes to see how AI affects everybody's lives, how we live in families, with our neighbors, in the way we live and work and play. And so AI needs to be guided by the citizen feedback, by our grandmothers, by our children. The feedback of all citizens is required. I said earlier about reading and writing. Reading, writing, and the printing press only had an effect on all of society when everybody could read, when everybody could write, when everybody could use and publish their printing press. So we have to have multi-stakeholder participation, which every single one of these, the top 5 finalists have talked about, that it's important to involve everyone. So the proposal is using Participy to actually have collaborative, cooperative, people-centered data networks where every community has data which can use AI to help that community flourish, to prosper, where every single person has a chance to shape AI. Next slide, please. And what is this? We've got to have the public sector, the private sector, and the social sector collaborating with the people, not just the leaders of these sectors, but the actual people. I have been in Silicon Valley for 4 decades. I was brought in by the US Department of Defense to look at the future of health. Within that, we found one of the most powerful multi-stakeholder approaches for partnership in the area of health. This has been published, called the Practical Playbook, how communities can share and learn. AI is not something that one country, one community, or Oxford can decide everything. One community might focus on a particular area, children. Another might, in industry, look at AI wearables. Another in the factories. Each of us are going to learn things, and we can learn and share from each other, and that's what Participy can allow us to do. Next slide, please. So participation, we have to really involve the people who can't read or write, who can't see. We need to use the phone. Conversational AI is what will allow us to do that. We learned a lot from being part of this and being part of the whole responsible AI process. And a lot of that was to pay attention to the effect on people as they interacted with AI. Yasha Stein is a trained Gestalt psychologist as well as an AI pioneer. We found that it's critically important that judgmental language cannot be part of how this happens. But sometimes, even if we're not planning to be judgmental, it can happen. So what we need is the feedback to tell us, you know, the way you said that was not okay for me. We need ongoing 365 days, 24/7 feedback from people. What works, what doesn't work. Next slide, please. And Participy has been in the top 100 for 2 years in a row. Next slide, please. So the lessons learned are, in fact, we have to have structured methodology. Physics has physics labs. AI needs AI labs. We have to learn how to measure and manage and share what we're learning. And the labs in India have to be able to collaborate with the labs in Italy. And everywhere in the world, it can't be on its own. But the scalability means we have to cater to the language. We heard this morning that India has 28 languages. How can we have one-size-fits-all AI for India or even anywhere else in the world? It needs to be tailored. We have to respect people. And only then can we be responsible. The guidelines from Participy have been co-authored to submit to the GPAI guidelines. Next slide, please. So what we will be working with GPAI to distribute. Next slide, please. I want to recognize how important the work of India has been as a pioneer. Nowhere else has demonstrated the enormous potential of the internet and AI. Just look at what's happening, that payments facilitates 12 billion transactions monthly. They thought it would take 40 years for the people of India to get bank accounts. It's already happened. So the promise is here, but we have to move forward engaging citizen feedback and participation, because this is a vast new frontier. And if we don't participate, we will get lost. So I wrote Make AI Work for Everybody. It's in one of the most prestigious publications on trust, the Edelman Group, and that was just published last week. Next slide, please. What we're doing is looking at an implementation plan. GovStack. In India, you have the digital building blocks, the India Stack. GovStack is the global United Nations initiative of digital building blocks. I'm on the advisory council for that. I believe that it is possible to take the India Stack and the proven track record of showing that it benefits the people to in fact show the world how digital public infrastructure can help. But it is critical to have ongoing citizen feedback and participation for AI governance. Next slide, please. So here's how. I have written papers for the German G7, and the Japan G7, and what is happening is everybody's investing in this. And the lending to emerging economies is happening for digital public infrastructure. So this is one of the biggest business opportunities, and this is what we need to do with responsible AI, is make sure business is involved. Next slide, please. Digital ports is something that will allow trading and flourishing anywhere in the world, but we cannot do it without the involvement of the people who live there and live in every place in the world. And last week I was in Ahmedabad and spoke with Reliance Group and Adani Group, and we want to see how participation can help them build the digital public infrastructure that can serve the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if there's another comment from the team, but hopefully you can share with us in the future some of the implementation and the guideline that you worked with us during the GPA project. We worked with the team to identify ways to implement ethical framework into the voice system. They are working on it right now, so I think they have not to share just yet, but they will probably share in the future. So thank you very much for the presentation. So we heard about these 4 teams. The 5th team cannot come. They're the team from Canada. They're working on, as Francesca mentioned, they're working on an infrastructure for implementing chatbot for customer support services. And this is an interesting project as well, but they can't come neither online. But you have all the information on the report. So the 5 teams that work with you, she mentioned that they were finalists. In fact, there are teams that were selected. We didn't run a competition really. It was an opportunity for teams to be part of the GPA project and to receive support. All 5 teams did a great job during the session, and then we tried to identify, with the experts' help, if they had a solution, if the solution was meeting the responsibility criteria, but also if they were able to operationalize their plan to showcase that they can implement those recommendations. All teams work great. One of the teams, we wanted to give all the teams some form of recognition, but one of the teams actually manifested itself more in terms of actually providing a full operational plan of implementation and showing readiness for launching and basically the solution. And that team is a Team Italy. Would like to recognize them and give them this recognition that we call changemaker, responsible changemaker, which basically means that the team has done enough to demonstrate readiness for scaling responsibly on their solution. So we have a little award to give you, which I guess I'm going to leave it to you. This is basically a recognition of your work during this session. Thank you. And I'd like to add also to ask my colleague, my coach Francesca, to say a few words about the work that we did with the teams. And again, this is not a competition. Other teams have not failed or anything else. Is that they have not been able to reach the level of readiness that we're thinking. But Francesca, if you add a few words as well, we'll be glad to hear you.
Sure, yes. If you can go to the next slide, I think that it mentions, you know, this recognition. So we called it change makers. We debated a lot among ourselves about the right name here, but we call it change makers because I think that we wanted to recognize teams that were ready to make changes and ready to make an impact in terms of responsible AI and implementation and scaling. So this team, the ErgoCAG team, really did a great job. You know, as I said, you know, we learned a lot from all the teams, and it was essential to have all the teams so diverse in the topics and the environment. But we felt that this team really did, you know, well beyond what we were expecting in identifying with us the challenge, putting together some ways of addressing the challenge, and then making a plan to implement what operational plan that we have put together. So we put this motivation for this recognition, for the successful participation and team effort to deploy responsible AI solution and evidence of readiness to scale responsibly. So I'm very happy to recognize this team, but as I said, all the teams were great, and the project would have been, you know, not successful without the help of all the teams. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to add also that other teams may also get this recognition soon, right? We're just waiting to see the operational plan as they execute, and as we launch it again next year in 2024, where more teams be recruited. We hope that more teams get this form of validation, which means that experts in the industry have validated that not only their work is basically built into responsible framework, but is ready to scale on multiple fronts that you've seen some of the deployment today.
Amir, maybe I would like to add also maybe something that maybe we know, but is not maybe known by others, that this recognition was decided not just by the two of us, for example, but by a whole panel of evaluation experts, you know, that signed up to be evaluating the teams at the beginning of the project. There were about 9 or 10 of them. And then we had a lot of criteria to evaluate the work of the team. And then we aggregated these scores and motivation on the criteria among all these 10 evaluators. So it was a collective effort, and I really would like to thank also the work of the evaluators. And by the way, I would also like to thank, but we can take it later, people that were essential in supporting the work of all the experts like Arnaud and Letitia that many of you have known already.
Thank you for joining, Francesca. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to now go to the third part of the session, which is the panel. Sander, if you can help us go to the next phase. We have actually one representative from government, which you heard, Daniela Battisti, if she's still with us a little bit more. Is there anyone else from government representative here that would like to join? Okay, so with that, we're going to start with the panel and the questions. And please, now this is time also to interact with us in terms of questions, because this is meant to be interactive and sharing the knowledge, but also hearing from you about suggestions, improvement, or anything else.
Okay, thank you, Amir. Let me start by asking our panelists here from the different teams one general question and see if they can pose that to the others. The question is, only the Italian representative is here, but imagine that all the representatives were here. What would you ask as a question to them as your biggest challenge in implementing your solutions in each of your cases? Imagine that you had an opportunity to talk to them face to face. What would you ask them for in terms of support from the government, in terms of supporting your solutions for responsible and scalable implementations? Any of you, please take the charge.
There's a huge need for digital cross-sector regulatory sandboxes. Right now, regulation is happening in health, in transportation, in social services, in silos. But in fact, it all comes together at the person. And so we can give participation and citizen feedback, and they'll say the health ministry is not talking to the transportation ministry, and what do they do? So that's the biggest problem.
Does it work? Yeah. So let's say what we are facing mainly is a big issue related to the time that we need to get approvals. So basically, working in the health environment, you need to ask for approval, different steps of approvals, to be able to test the solution on patient and in real environment. So this might, let's say, normally requires a lot of time and can be up to month, year to get this, let's say, the grant for that. So this delays a little bit all the process because apart of getting the grant for that, you need also 1, 2, 3 years to collect enough data to be able to then create a responsible AI solution. So then, you know, when you do research in a research environment, then you are focused on the research itself and you want to transfer it in a real world. And if it takes so much time, then can be a little bit a problem for the real, let's say, development of the system.
It's a bit of a challenge to...
I can hear you.
You can hear you.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a challenge to...
Use the mic. It's working.
It's working, is it? To look at things as, is there a silver bullet or a golden bullet for all the problems, or perhaps like, is there one thing that we can do to change the entire system? I think it's perhaps a challenge to look at it that way. Especially when it comes to new ideas, new concepts, and new technologies. It's never just one thing that needs to be changed. And in fact, if I even have to clear off everything and say, if we need to focus on one that needs to change, it's usually the existing players who have a very serious vested interest in continuing with the existing system, who also happen to be the biggest roadblock in any kind of a new technology. And that's also very obvious. As in, if you look at a lot of these digital applications, it's not usually the developed countries which have actually scaled up and you know, kind of made it equitable and across the you know, usable across the citizens, but it's actually India, a lot of African countries which don't have legacy systems, which are opposing and you know, which are perhaps being the roadblock, and this is actually facilitating these areas. But on the other side, if you look at our systems, especially on the healthcare side, when we say, you know, we are coming out with a new idea, and you go to perhaps like, you know, a state headquarters or a district headquarters, the first thing is like everything works here, and we all know that things don't work. So even acknowledging the fact that you know, things are not right, things are perhaps like need to be improved, is a huge step that people have to take. And then you need to look at all the other problems. So this is perhaps the first problem that we actually face, and then there are like 100 problems next to it.
Okay.
If I can complement the words of my colleague, also it came to my mind the need, the constant need for invest in education and in research. So this for sure is something that is a responsibility of the government and institutions. So we have a strong need. Basically, I think about the basic things. So having a lot of people that are well instructed and very expert in our sector that can help us to continue to pursue our research work, as well as complementary experts in other fields to make our work be effective in the real life. Mm-hmm. And also for research, because for sure we rely on public money, and without this we could not exist. So, yeah.
Thank you. Eduardo, do you have any comments from Mexico? I see your hands raised, so
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. First, I want to say that the government is not a unique entity, you know. We are in the government, but there is a regional government, federal government, and some people who make the rules, the regulation, these kind of things. In our project, we learned that because we are part of this government, that we need more communication channels with all the levels of the government in order to implement these projects. And of course, we need some resources to do this, some organization, these kind of things. But this is important to remember that the government is not a unique entity, and we need to interact with several levels in the government. I don't know if somebody from Mexico are there in GPA and in India, but we believe that it would be great to have a better communication with all the levels of the government in order to create better implementation. That is my main comment.
Thank you, Eduardo. I think we saw a broad set of comments here, starting from people participation, governments acknowledging that their systems may not be working and new solutions may be needed, to improving the approval processes, providing support, and as well as dealing with the different levels of government. There are many countries that have the federal government structure where people have to deal with the central, state, and city level entities. So there's very many suggestions coming from the teams. I hope people from the government take note of these suggestions coming from the teams as well. Daniela, I think you may have to leave soon. So do you have any reactions? Do you have any comments? Please let us know here.
I think that that there is an aspect that was raised by one of the speakers that I believe it's worth considering, and that's the one on regulatory sandboxes. Italy passed a law most recently, and I believe that that could be also another way of looking at the problem of the issue. Actually, it's not really a problem of how to apply the responsible framework to the real product. So this is something that definitely we are going to consider, because our regulatory sandboxes never apply to AI, but that's a good suggestion. Thank you. Actually, I didn't know if you call me or Daniele or Daniela, but in any case, sorry.
I am the one who should be apologizing because Daniele and Daniela sounds very similar to us. So thank you very much for your patience and your pointing out that application of frameworks is an important aspect of the solution. And I think that's something we all recognize, development and application of the frameworks. With that, we would like to open to see if you have any questions. Okay, so there is a question from online. Danielle? Oh, I see he has a form up.
Yeah, so from Daniela to Daniele. So I just wanted to say, I just wanted to add a comment which is also in line with what Daniela was saying. So probably it's the time to really test these frameworks that take a step to propose responsible frameworks. And because, I mean, if we think what happened back in time with airplanes, for instance, no? So airplanes, okay, started then provided a solution to something that was not possible before, but then clearly we didn't talk only about the fact that airplanes might crash, but then we defined standards for subparts of the airplanes, okay? And then we had to certify that then we had safety systems of subcomponents. And so probably this is, and in order to do so, we have to understand what might break when an airplane takes off. And in order to do so, we have to test these frameworks as much as we can. So this comment is in line with what Daniela was saying, but I wanted to enforce the fact that the concept of responsible AI, sometimes it's not really clear, and we have to somehow take a step in order to clearly define what we mean, especially when we go towards real applications. Because if we are vague into real applications, then it's really difficult to take concrete steps to make responsible AI solutions work in practice.
Thank you, Daniele. Any comment from Daniela? No, we have covered it.
Yes, well, you know, we totally agree with Daniele. We had a conversation with the researcher and private sector on these specific issues. And as I say, we are taking this opportunity of the Italian presidency of G7 to at least within the G7 context start to think about what responsible means in practical terms, because otherwise, as I tried to say at the beginning, the conversation becomes very blurred, and even policymakers are at loss. So they are always talking about defending humanity, and without considering, as Daniele said, that if we do not move from that conversation, we will never empower people, because the idea is that this should become or will become, we know, as part of our daily life, exactly like we drive a car or we take an airplane. So that's, as I said, this is very, very important, but of course we need standards, we need metrics, and we need to start to show what is responsible AI.
Thank you very much, Daniela. Any other questions or
Yes,
comments from the
over
audience? 1 minute. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Now, hello? Yeah. Now, responsible AI tenets, one of them happens to be interpretability. Now, I saw 3 of the solutions, 2 of them implementation, at least I did not see, but all the 3 implementations seems to be image-based. Now, whenever you do image-based, it's primarily neural networks, and with my limited knowledge, what I understand is, once you do the feature generation using neural networks, it becomes basically a black box. So there is no interpretability over there, right? So the question is, when you speak of responsible AI and so much about interpretability, is there some mechanism in development, in research phase maybe, which allows you to do that? Thank you. If anyone of you knows.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a single method here that you need to use to identify the features within an image and then say, okay, this could be, this feature, and then come out with an assumption at least. How do we bring in interpretability into this method here? Now, one way that you can perhaps do is to look at what is the weightage given to each and every sub-feature or a micro-feature that is actually giving you this output. So I guess you need to look at it from the reverse way, as in when you actually start training, you kind of divide and then you train and then say, okay, this group is this group is that. But then once you do that, you can actually go back the reverse way and see what are the contributors to selecting this into this group and this group, and then you will be able to understand. So that's one way you can actually do it.
That's not scalable, right?
Yeah, let me kind of take it forward a little bit. In our case, what we are actually seeing, or what we are even thinking of doing it, is why are we actually using everybody's image to come out with some kind of an average, bring in a new image, and then see where this image actually goes? Is it above average or below average? When in our case, we actually have your own image, which was normal. And then you will be able to use that image and then compare this present image and see what is abnormal. So here you have a very clear, straightforward way to interpret what is going to be the outcome, because you are not comparing the averages of all the previous images, but rather your own normal image and saying, hey, this is the normal image, this seems to be somewhat of a difference, and this is the abnormality. So there's a very clear path to interpretability to the what you call outputs that you are actually coming out. So this is the path that we have actually chosen, and I hope I'm trying to answer, but I'm also trying to answer the questions.
Why do people come to you when they don't have a problem, so that you have that data? You know?
I agree. I mean, this has been an area where we actually discussed a lot, and I would again, I'll try to say that I'm going to attempt to answer your question. You are at liberty to agree or disagree. Now, everybody knows prevention is better than cure. Have we agreed? So if I have to prevent a disease, I'll have to prevent a disease at a very early stage. Now, what is very early stage? Nobody actually knows about it, because the moment you actually walk into a clinic or a doctor, 70% of the disease is fairly developed. So the question that you asked is like, why do I actually need to capture a normal image of you? Because only if I have the normal image of you, I'll be able to identify the very early stages of abnormality. Otherwise, there is no way that I can actually identify what is abnormal. Now, one of the issues that we kind of discussed, and perhaps like maybe again attempted to answer, is how long are we going to hold the normal images? So if you are going to be continuously normal over different cycles of evaluation, maybe we can slowly start disregarding the tail end of the data and perhaps keep the front end of the data, which is perhaps like maybe 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, where you are normal, and then slowly start tracing you. So these are again work in progress, and as I said, I'm trying to attempt to answer a question.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. I think Eduardo has raised a hand. He would like to answer.
Yeah, sure. First, this is actually an open question, and we have to think that these kind of models don't have this property. We have to think that the neural networks, the deep learning models, maybe you could do something calling explainable AI. This is after the training. You can see, I mean, this is a big quote, you can try to understand what is a model learning. You don't know maybe why, but you can see some features, at least with some convolutional neural network models, and then you can take decision about this feature when if you know something about this problem. For instance, if you see that the model looks for the background instead of the main object, this model is not working well. You know, there is a lot of example about that, about the wolf in the snow, and this kind of examples. So in this case, at least for our team, we try to see the explainable AI, not the not to interpret the model, because this is a property of the model, and the neural network doesn't have this property so far. Maybe a few random forests and this kind of methods, they have some interpretation. That is my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. Quick response from Malin, and then we have one more question.
This is why many people should have their say, because if you leave it only up to one scientist in one laboratory, somebody who has worked with a different race or a different culture may actually notice things. And so science is always advanced by having many perspectives on the same data. And we need to really understand that interpretability and explainability is by the person who interpreted and explained. And the most neutral way is to have many people agree on that.
Thank you, Maylene. There's one more question here.
Thank you very much. Maya Bogotai. I am Data Governance co-chair. So I have one comment and one question. Comment is data governance should be, which is the mother of artificial intelligence, should be done according to the data justice principles, and then many problems go away, including that the people who want to control AI have better understanding what's the AI for, so there is a easier adoption phase, or you don't need to preach that you need to use AI, but people start to use AI. So the first comment as a co-chair of data governance. The second is the question. Amazing project, but I don't understand how you are originally financed, whether you come from research, whether there is some private funding. Probably there is a difference between all these different projects. And here is the question. Scalability probably means that the developments of AI solutions are ready to attract bigger investments. How to prevent that something that is labeled responsible AI stays responsible, even if it attracts private money? Thank you.
Right. Excellent questions. First of all, thank you for pointing out that data and AI are jointed at the hip, and you cannot think of one without the other. Thank you. Any of the team members want to talk about the question that was posed?
Yeah, I think we need to really consider labeling and licensing for AI and certification over its entire life cycle of use. And we are really at the very earliest stage of maturity about thinking about that. But if we don't step up to it, we will continue to debate and tell anecdotes and tell stories. We need to label and license. We need to have the AI producers be held accountable to their claims, and actually if their claims aren't met, say so. We've done labeling and licensing for drugs, for food, for almost everything else. We have to do it for AI.
Thank you. Daniele, you have a comment?
Can I add? Yeah. So I just wanted to remark that I think that it's going to be really difficult to prevent the fact that the AI can be used in a wrong way. It's like preventing that we use a car to invest people. I mean, this is not going to be possible. Okay, so once again, even if data acquired are taken the right way, and then we might put in place some mechanisms that control the development of right solutions, it's going to be probably impossible to prevent. So I wouldn't use this word, prevent the fact that some of these solutions might be used in the wrong way. Probably we have to put in place somehow processes that are certified and can guarantee that when institutions and individuals follow them, then we have responsible AI solutions. And that these individuals and institutions should be somehow helped or encouraged, or I don't know, receive special gratifications from society. We have to put in place these reward mechanisms. But somehow there will always be benign and non-benign use of AI. And actually what I think is that if we put too many constraints, then we risk to somehow constrain the benign applications, and the bad ones that do not follow them then somehow are really impossible to track. Okay, so we have to be careful, okay, in these regulatory frameworks. And once again, probably the testing of the AI solutions will really reveal what is the best way to get a responsible AI solutions that will depend upon the specific use case. So there was that nice quote that premature optimization is the root of all evil. Yeah, so probably we have to be careful in this premature optimization also in the responsible AI.
Thank you, Daniele. Your teammate also wants to say something, and then
Yeah,
Suresh has a response, and then Amir wants to make a comment. So I think with that, we will have to watch the time to see how far we go. Thank you.
Yeah, very quickly, I totally agree with Daniele, and for sure, when investor came up, a business is founded, and then you have to survive. So for sure, even if you have good willings, it may be impossible to take care of all the possible risks that can happen. So in our case, for instance, we are funded by the Italian Institute for Prevention Against Injuries, and this, in our point of view, is our way to try to be responsible, to do the things in the best way possible, to take care of a lot of aspects related to the social goodness of our future product. But for sure, there are aspects that we are not considering, maybe. We don't know, so it's a work in progress. And yeah.
Thank you. Suresh?
Yeah, I think there are actually live examples where digital platforms are actually responsible and equitable, at least in our case, the UPI, where there are private players operating on top of UPI, but government sets the larger framework and everybody operates. So there's a role for government and there's also a role for the private players, and both can actually coexist. There's also another example, which is the ONDC, where e-commerce players are operating on top of the ONDC framework, and there is scope for both of them to work together. In our case, when you're talking about healthcare, there's this broad concept of universal healthcare, which again, every government wants to actually roll it out, even in the developing countries. So there are actually frameworks. What we are trying to do is bring in AI to make these frameworks work a lot better. So as long as we kind of integrate our work, the broader work, into existing frameworks, and also find space for the government to monitor and perhaps like come out with a governance framework where the private players can improve the efficiencies and effectiveness of these services, I think both can coexist and work together. And this is something that seems to be working, and I hope it's going to continue working. What was not working was the social media platforms, which unfortunately went out of the hands of the government, and I guess that's causing a lot of issues. I think that's a different discussion.
I wanted to add something. Very good question, by the way. This is one of the foundation of this project. It started with these assumptions that as many as good application we find that could be deemed responsible or ethical or explainable or beneficial to people, they're not commercially viable. And the support from them needs to come either from a common good bucket of money, could be foundations or government or taxes, or could be coming from private money. So the answer is unknown right now. The work that we're doing is to identify cases for responsible scaling, and those could be probably a candidate for a new discussion on business models. I think it's commonly agreed today, after all these discussions on AI in the past few years, that as much we pursue technology innovation, we need also to pursue social innovation. That could basically accompany that, but also help us understand how to use it. And that social innovation could probably lead to better policy or to some form of support and incentivize for new business model innovation, a new form of collaboration, as was mentioned here. I think what Daniele said is that we have no choice when we touch humans and their lives to be responsible no matter what. Companies get away with it right now because there's a race. At some point, applications that need to scale and benefit humanity need somehow to be under the guidance of some regulatory framework or some general oversight. So the business model innovation, which I don't have the answer, and the how-to could be probably the work of many of us, including your or anyone else, to identify what mechanisms and incentives can we create to promote investment and support of effort from academia to industry that could actually deliver better solutions for more people. So that's the view that we have. There's not an answer, but that's the view. Hopefully we can achieve part of that in the project and identify learnings too. I don't know if we have more time, but thank you so much for coming. It was a delight to work with all the teams. Do you have more questions? Go ahead.
Generally, we used to see that people or masses use AI not for the productive purpose. They just use to take the shortcuts. So how can we encourage our masses, our audience to take only it for the productive purpose, not to just take the shortcut and all this? Because don'ts are there. So how can we encourage our masses for the for using this AI in the right direction? That's my query.
I think we can reach out to ourselves to ask the question. There's always going to be bad actors, as we call bad actors. So you cannot regulate them or force them to anything. You can basically provide mechanisms, right, to combat their attitude. I think the rest is about education and about incentives that aligns, right, multiple agendas together. There's no other way than education. Education goes from the end user to the designer to the developer to the policymaker. Right now we talk about regulatory sandbox, policy sandbox. We can talk about educating en masse people about expectation they may have about these systems, what level of knowledge they have about it, what they can do with it. It's like taking a driver's license for driving a car, right? At some point there is a rule of the road and there is an exam that you have to pass, you have to test the car, and you basically it's a privilege to use that car. So if you don't abide by that, you don't do that. But pretty much you get people more and more. So I don't think there's a silver bullet to that answer. We're all trying to do the right thing. Economic incentives have to be most aligned first. Yeah. Well, I think we're past the time that we are, but so we're going to stay here if you have more questions ourselves. But thank you so much for coming, and we hope you have a wonderful summit in the next 2 days. Thank you very much. Thank you.
One final comment. As you may know, this project is continuing next year, and we'll be working with more teams to help them, mentor them. So if anybody in the audience has interest in mentoring or becoming an expert, please talk to us and we will let you know how we can do that. Thank you.
Just want to announce for lunch. So for lunch for speakers is at the Leaders Lounge, right next to the summit at level 2. And lunch for everyone else is in hall 14 in the first floor.